Hello guys, welcome back to my NHL 2018 Stanley Cup Playoffs prediction video. Now in today's video we're going to be recapping, going to be going in depth on to every series here in kind of in mini bursts here, and we'll be going through every series and who I think will eventually win the Stanley Cup. Now we'll start with the playoff matchups if you don't know already. Nashville faces Colorado, Winnipeg faces Minnesota, Vegas versus Los Angeles, Anaheim versus San Jose, then you got Tampa Bay in the East facing New Jersey, then you got Boston facing Toronto, then Washington versus Columbus, and last but certainly not least, you got Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia. Now we'll work our way for the West, the first round, the second round, and the third round throughout the West. Then we'll go to the East, where we'll look at the first round, the second round, and the third round. Now the first playoff series we'll talk about is Nashville versus Colorado. And it's going to be a pretty interesting series to see how well Colorado will do after the disastrous season last season. And of course, making the playoffs this season, it's going to be really interesting how well they do against a Nashville Predators squad, who, of course, is the favorite to win the Stanley Cup. And that's very interesting. How many games will the Colorado Avalanche win? And I believe that the Nashville Predators will win against Colorado Avalanche 4-2 in that series. I think the Colorado Avalanche will sneak a couple of games past Nashville, but nothing to make it too serious, as the Nashville Predators will pretty much win 4 games pretty easily, even though the Colorado Avalanche will still give a fight. Now in that second series, we have Winnipeg and Minnesota, and it's a very interesting series. I mean, Minnesota just lost Suter, which is a big key thing for them, and it could definitely go either way. I mean, Minnesota could catch on fire and start to play out in the playoffs, and they could be pretty scary, especially with those players, and even though they're missing Suter, it still is a pretty scary team there that could catch on fire in the playoffs. But again, facing the Winnipeg Jets, that's going to be a huge problem for them and a huge block on that path. And I think that the Winnipeg Jets will just squeak it out with a 4-3 win in the series. Going to Game 7, I think that Game 7 will be pretty dominant to Winnipeg. Of course, they have that home ice advantage in Winnipeg, and I think that will work out to their favor just a little bit, and I think they'll just sneak out of the first round. Then we'll head over to the Pacific Division matchups as we have Vegas versus LA, and this is a very interesting series because I think that LA can make it very competitive, and I think that Vegas Golden Knights will just squeak out a win. But again, I think LA is a good matchup against them. I think they're tied in the season series 2-2, and LA, I think, matches up pretty well against Vegas, and I mean, they could make it very competitive. They could win, but I predict them to lose in 7 games against Vegas, and Vegas to move on to the second round in 7 games. Now, the last matchup on the West, we have the Anaheim Ducks and the San Jose Sharks. Now, not spoiling anything for the East, but I predicted no sweeps in the East, and of course we haven't seen a sweep, or at least I haven't predicted it, in the West yet. I feel like this is going to be the first sweep that we see. The Ducks have won 5 straight. I think they've won like 11 straight at home, and they've won 5 straight going into the playoffs. And I think that the San Jose Sharks they've been okay going into the playoffs, but I don't think that they have been good at all going into the playoffs. And I think that we'll see our only sweep of the entire playoffs right here. Anaheim Ducks will sweep the San Jose Sharks. Now, I don't like to say that because the Anaheim Ducks are one of my least favorite teams, and the San Jose Sharks are one of my favorite teams. But I do think that the San Jose Sharks have gotten cold at the last minutes, and I think that the Anaheim Ducks do have the firepower and have been playing fantastic going into the playoffs. I think that will result in 1 sweep there, and the only sweep in the playoffs I'm predicting Anaheim sweeping San Jose in 4 games. Now heading over to the East for the first matchup, we have Tampa Bay versus New Jersey, and I do think that the New Jersey Devils will give a bit of a fight, but again, they'll win 1 game. I said that the Tampa Bay Lightning win 4-1 in that series. The New Jersey Devils have a few key pieces, but I don't think that that's enough to beat a Tampa Bay Lightning squad that, even though it hasn't been great lately, has still the firepower to compete in the playoffs and some playoff experience, some major playoff experience on that team. I think that they will pretty much overhand the New Jersey Devils. They'll get a game, and the Devils will squeak out a game, but I think that Tampa Bay Lightning will win 4-1 in that series. Then we head over to Toronto and Boston, a must-watch series. Just gonna be fantastic. And I think that this series just in general, could go either way. It could go Boston, it could go Toronto, and it could definitely go either way. I can definitely see both happening, but I'm going to predict, and this is pretty much against a lot of people's opinions, I think that the Toronto Maple Leafs will win the series 4-2 over the Boston Bruins. And you may be saying, well, what's no Game 7? I do think that they'll be able to just get out that Game 6 and win it. I think Toronto has the power, and they are 3-1 against Boston this season, which is a good sign. I mean, being able to play against a good Boston team who has been good throughout the whole season for the Leafs, and to beat them 3-1, it looks good going into the playoffs, and I think that will be a factor. I think that the Leafs will have the experience going into the playoffs to beat them, and I think the Boston Bruins will be kind of upset, but at the same time, I think that Toronto will just squeak out the win, and just barely, because I think that Game 6 will be exhilarating. And again, this series pretty much a must-watch. And I think that, again, it could go Boston's way just as easily. Then we switch over to the Metro, and we have Washington versus Columbus. And this is going to be a good series to watch. And like Columbus will give it their all, but I think that Washington is too prepared for this matchup, in all honesty. I think that they have it done. And even though it will be pretty competitive, I say the Washington Capitals, even though they get it to Game 7, will win in Game 7 and advance to the second round there. Then we have quite possibly, comparatively to Boston and Toronto, again, that is a must-watch series, but this is probably the must-watch series of all the must-watch series. Pittsburgh versus Philadelphia. Now, I don't know how competitive it will be. I don't know how Philadelphia will compare and how they'll play against Pittsburgh, but it's pretty much guaranteed it's going to be a bloodbath, man. It's going to be a fantastic series to watch. I'm hoping to be able to watch as much as I can of this because it's going to be fantastic. You don't get to see the Battle of Pennsylvania too often in playoffs, and that's something that I'm going to want to watch. I'm going to want to tune in every single night to watch, and that's going to be fantastic to watch. But again, I think that the Pittsburgh Penguins have got the Philadelphia, at least the Flyers, numbered lately, but I do think that the Pittsburgh Penguins will win 4-2, and I think that the Pittsburgh Penguins will win Game 6, and of course, beat the Philadelphia Flyers in 6 games to advance to round 2, and of course, you know what that means. Washington versus Pittsburgh, but again, let's go back to the West. Then we head over to the second round matchups in the West, and we have Nashville versus Winnipeg, another great series on the horizon if that does end up happening, and that's going to be a great series to watch, again, if it does end up happening, but I do think that Nashville will be able to just barely win against Winnipeg, maybe not even get to 7 games, but I do think the Nashville Predators will win 4-2 in that series. It's going to be a great series to watch, again, if it happens, but it's looking likely to happen as well. But again, that would be a fantastic series to watch. Two teams that are pretty evenly matched, and the Nashville Predators are just slightly better than them. I think that it would be a fantastic series to just watch as a hockey fan because both teams are pretty evenly matched. Both teams can bring their all, and in the second round, it's going down to the wire. I think that Winnipeg will bring their all, but it just won't be enough to overcome the Nashville Predators. Now, in the Eastern Conference, in the second round, we have Tampa Bay Lightning versus Toronto Maple Leafs. That's going to be a fantastic series to watch. My second favorite team and my fourth favorite team dueling it out, and that's going to be a fast, fun series to watch. It's just going to be a good evenly matched series for both sides. I think that is a good matchup for both teams, and it would just be a fun, exhilarating, just great hockey to watch. I do think that Tampa Bay Lightning will win 4-2, but Toronto will give a good fight in games. Again, a lot of the games will be close, but Tampa Bay will be clutch in the last few minutes and be able to squeak out quite a few wins in the last minutes and get some clutch goals when they really shouldn't have. And you guessed it, in the second round, the Washington Capitals face off against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And again, in the second round, another one of those matchups. And you guys are going to hate me on this. You guys are going to think I'm crazy. But I think the Washington Capitals will win that series. And I do think that they'll win that in 5. Now, here's what'll happen. If the Washington Capitals let that series go to 6 or 7 games, I think the Pittsburgh Penguins will win that game. Win that series, at least. If the Washington Capitals win in 4, 5, again, 6 might be possible, but that's a bit of a stretch. If they win, if they get the series to 5 games, I think that's, and they end it, I think that they will have a much better chance than allowing it to go to 6 and 7 games, where the Pittsburgh Penguins could come back on them and win the series and no problem. And I think that the Washington Capitals are going to have to get this series win early in the series without having to get to that 6th and 7th game where they've been pretty bad against Pittsburgh Penguins and allowed the Pittsburgh Penguins to win in years past. I think that the Washington Capitals, if they do that prediction, if they win in 5 games, I think that they could do that, and I think that they are probably set if they get that early series win to get into the Eastern Conference Final. Then we got over to the Western Conference Final, and we have Nashville versus Vegas. And I do think this is where Vegas magic does turn to an end, as I think the Nashville Predators will win 4-2. Now, similar to Toronto against that Tampa Bay Lightning, I think that there will be close games, but I just think that the Nashville Predators will be able to score goals in clutch situations, while the Vegas Golden Knights will just stare and watch. And I think that the Vegas Golden Knights will have a good series, and they will play well against the Nashville Predators, but I do think that there will just be some bad plays, maybe a couple bad calls, something like that. Something will go away, the Nashville Predators' way, that'll just make it so the Nashville Predators win a couple extra games and advance to the Stanley Cup Final. Now, in the Eastern Conference Final, you have Tampa Bay versus Washington. Now, I love the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're my second favorite team behind the Dallas Stars, but I'm not going to be biased here. I think that they do have defensive problems, and I think they will come up and bite them in that Eastern Conference Final against the Washington Capitals, who have a lethal offensive squad. I do think the Washington Capitals will win 4-2 in that series. Maybe we'll push to a Game 7, but I do think in 6 games, Washington Capitals will be able to get it done, and they'll advance to the Stanley Cup Final. Now, the Tampa Bay Lightning will play well. Again, they might have some situations where they get some bad calls on them. Something doesn't go their way, but I do think the Tampa Bay Lightning will be outplayed by the Washington Capitals. I think the Capitals will be ready for this series and will be able to beat them. And the Washington Capitals will face off against the Nashville Predators in the Stanley Cup Finals for 2018. And this would be a fun series, a back-and-forth series. Now, I don't think the Nashville Predators will get away as easily as people expect if this series was to come. And the Washington Capitals know that it is one of their last shots and will go as hard as they possibly can for it. And I think the game series will go to 7 games, with an exhilarating finish in Nashville. But I do think the Nashville Predators will just be able to squeak past the Washington Capitals and win the Stanley Cup. Now, there's a few reasons for that. They might be an upset. I mean, Colorado could win against them, but I do think that they'll have vengeance of getting back to the Stanley Cup Final and wanting to win that. Like last season, getting beat by the Pittsburgh Penguins, I think they'll want some revenge for the NHL and get past the hump and finally win their first Stanley Cup in franchise history. The Washington Capitals get another Stanley Cup Final loss, but I do think that getting all the way there is pretty successful for them. And Nashville, of course, just has an overall fantastic team, and they're pretty much built as any team could possibly want to be going into the playoffs. And I think the Washington Capitals will be kind of a surprise going out of the East. And I think there is set to be one surprise at least. I mean, there almost is every single year. So I think that there is a chance that it'll be this way. And again, I don't think it's going to be Boston or Tampa Bay against Nashville Predators. I don't think it's going to be something predictable. I think there's going to be at least one surprise coming out of the East. And for the Washington Capitals, there's somewhat of a surprise. Of course, getting past the second round against Pittsburgh, it would be pretty surprising. There could likely be some surprise. I mean, there might be another 8 seed winning against some first seed. I mean, Nashville did it last year. LA, I think in 2012, did that and won the cup. There could be a lot of upsets and a lot of surprises, and don't rule out that 8 seed because they could come back to bite you. But if you're hating on my list for some reason, if you're hating on my prediction for some reason, just know whatever I predict is usually wrong. So even if you're mad about it, hey, your team, let's say you're the Winnipeg Jets, you're mad that I predicted them to be out in the second round. Well, because I predicted them to be out in the second round, because I predicted them to be out in the second round, they'll probably win the Stanley Cup because that's how it works. I mean, hashtag GravJinx. But again, just take my predictions with a grain of salt because, again, I'm no expert here. But yes, it's going to be very fun looking back on it. How wrong will I end up being? That might actually be a video that I make. How wrong was I with my predictions? That'll be fun to make too. But again, this is one of my favorite things to do, making predictions for the playoffs and seasons for other leagues too, but primarily the NHL. One of my favorite things to do. But man, looking forward to Colorado win against Nashville and basically ruin every single bracket ever made. But that's good, guys. Like, subscribe, and not ring that bell down. And tell me down below who you think will win the Stanley Cup, and maybe go a bit farther and tell me who will win each series. And if you want to go that far, tell me all about it. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.